Welcome back inside our Frenzy Lounge. Lindsay Hamilton with Bryan Hayes, and the frenzy is in full force, Bryan. It's been a busy start to the day. Let's take a look at the Atlantic Division so far. Pretty busy when you look at what those four teams have done. Right now, based on how everything is looking, rank your top four teams in the Atlantic for us.
Okay, I actually am not going to change the rankings based on the standings from a year ago.
Okay.
I like the moves from all four teams, but I still have the champs at number one, right? Sam Reinhart's back. I know Montour has left. Stollarts has left. They got to spend some money. I believe that they will, and I still love the core that they have there. They have the advantage of being in Florida. I still have the Panthers at number one. I have the Bruins at number two. Zadorov and Lindholm long-term, those are good players. Zadorov I don't love as a long-term player, but I like the action he brings over the next year or two in Boston. And Lindholm I think is a perfect fit up the middle of the ice there. He steps in brilliantly with what they already have. So I like Boston at two. I'm a little bit concerned that Allmark's not there anymore, but they're just ahead of the Leafs at three. I like the moves the Leafs have made. Like fundamentally, they're still running it back as of now with the core four and Morgan Riley making it a core five. I still question if that can get the job done at the end of the day in terms of the playoff performance, but I like Tanev. I like Ekman-Larsson here. I like Stollarts and Wall. Not as much as others, but I'm going to give it an opportunity because they're cheap contracts and they can spread the money elsewhere. And then I got Tampa at four, and Tampa's been incredibly active. We talked earlier about Stamkos leaving, Gensel coming in. I just feel like their depth is still challenged a little bit there. Their core is still aging. I still have Tampa at four, but it's a big four. It's a daunting task for the rest of the Atlantic, the rest of the East, the rest of the league, because someone from this division ends up in the Cup final every single year.
It seems that has been the trend over the last few years. Okay, but those are your top four. What about the bottom half? Who's cracking in from that bottom half list?
I don't think any of them are. And I know people in Ottawa don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I don't think Detroit wants to hear that. I don't think Montreal, Buffalo want to hear that. Those teams are coming. Montreal in particular, they got a lot of youth. They're loading up the minors in terms of bringing new players coming in over the next year or two. I like where Montreal is going. They're not ready to pounce. Ottawa wants to. Buffalo wants to. Detroit wants to. I think they still have a ways to go to get into that top four. And if I'm being honest, in terms of their chances of possibly breaking through, I think it's one of the big four that we talked about has to take a step back. I don't think it's about Ottawa taking a massive step forward. I like Allmark coming in. I like Perron coming in. I like Green as a coach. I think they'll be better, but they have to take a massive step to get there. Detroit really ran out of gas down the stretch. They're a good team. I don't think they're a great team. I think those teams, realistically, Linz, are looking at the Leafs goaltending completely being a disaster, like a huge miss and the Leafs fall back. Maybe Boston without Allmark there to help Swayman, somehow they fall back. Tampa ages out and they have injuries. It's more about the big teams falling out as opposed to one of the bottom four teams jumping up.
Hayes, you're not giving very much optimism for those Canadian teams.
It is if you're one of the good four teams.
I suppose, for the top half, yeah.
Yes.
But I think some Canadian hockey fans might be a little disappointed with that answer. But as you mentioned, my goodness, the Atlantic has been an absolute powerhouse. 3 of the past 5 Cup winners have come from the Atlantic Division. Pretty impressive.